Welcome to the Ad Nauseam podcast, where classical gourmands everywhere can finally get their fill. Join us for a delectable discussion of Greco-Roman civilization stretching from the Minoans and Mycenaeans through the Renaissance and right down to the present. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here are your hosts, Dr. David Noe and Dr. Jeff Winkle.
Welcome, listeners, to episode 70 of the Ad Nauseam podcast. My name is Dr. Jeff Winkle, and I'm here in the vomitorium, as I always am, with my good friend, Dr. David Noe. How you feeling tonight, Dave?
I'm doing pretty well, Jeff, and you are not always here.
I'm always here. When I'm here, you are also here.
Okay.
Right, so
thanks for the clarification.
Maybe my grammar was not precise
I
enough.
don't know, but this is the septuagesimal episode, isn't it?
Yes, number 70.
Number 70.
Yeah.
Who would have thought when we started with number 1 we would get to 70?
Not me.
It seems like last year, 2 years ago now.
Is it almost 2 years
A
ago?
long time.
Yes, excellent.
So tonight?
Yes, we're talking about, it's something we've teased in earlier episodes.
That's correct.
We've brought up.
We've threatened, I think, is the term you're looking for.
We're talking about the Elgin marbles.
Correct.
Tonight. Yes, this famous, I'm going to use the word theft.
Okay, you go ahead with that.
Of the Parthenon sculptures by one Lord Elgin way back in the early part of the 19th century. We're going to talk about his story, and we're going to talk about a little bit about the controversy that remains to this day about where these marbles should be.
And this is based largely on a book that you've read.
Yes, right. So our main source tonight is this book here for our YouTube viewers, is The Elgin Affair by Theodore Vetos, which was published in 1997. And a lot of things have happened since then, but it's a really nice, concise, readable, for the most part, unbiased account of this whole affair.
Now, see, I haven't read this particular one, but it's going on my list right away.
Yes.
Vetos is a Greek name. Is Vretos?
Vretos, yes. Sorry.
Vretos,
yes.
a Greek, isn't it?
He's a Greek, right?
Okay.
So he's got a little bit of kind of personal stake in this.
I'm guessing he has an axe to grind. He's got some olives to press.
A little bit. I think he has a soft touch, but at the end of the day, he's very much pro repatriation.
Okay.
Right?
Bring the marbles back from the British Museum.
Yes, exactly right.
But before we get there,
Yep.
we have to give a shout out.
We do.
And this goes to Ely Heisinger.
Ely Heisinger, one of my favorite students I
Yes.
had back in the day. And she's actually someone I've known since she was quite a young girl.
Really?
When she was a 12-year-old obsessed with Harry Potter. And
How did you cross paths with Ely?
we were part of kind of a friend group with her parents. And,
Okay.
and we hung out together. And
Wow.
So I got to know her and her sisters very well.
So she was forewarned in terms of consuming any of your instruction.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Yes, exactly right. Yeah. So I had her as a student in a pre-college program.
Right.
And she took some Latin from me.
Wow.
And an extremely bright young
She's
woman.
a very bright young woman. I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, she took art and architecture with me.
She did.
Yep. A very good student.
Yeah.
And so she says, yes, of course you can give me a shout out. I don't have anything particularly in mind for you to say.
Yes.
But I do recall Jeff singing a translated version of Maroon 5's Sugar in Latin class that I would love to hear again.
I don't know if that survived the computer transfers over the years.
Now, Maroon 5 is a rock group, right?
Yeah, pop.
A pretty popular one.
Pop band, Adam Levine.
He's the main singer,
Yes,
right? He's got the tattooed sleeves.
He tattooed all over his body.
And he went on to some reality TV fame, is that right?
That doesn't surprise me. I don't know. I mean, he's kind of one of these ubiquitous figures, right?
Pop star. So what is Sugar about, and why did you translate it?
I was trying to trying to keep it fun.
You're trying to keep it. This sounds like you.
What I would every once in a while I would translate a few lines of a song that was popular at the time.
Okay.
Put it up on the screen and see if any of the students could guess what the song is, right? And then the reward, so to speak, is they could guess it. Then I would have to sing maybe a verse or a chorus of this.
Right.
And so I believe Ely and there was somebody else in the class who got it fairly quickly.
Oh, so then you had to sing some.
I had to sing a little bit. It was a lot of fun.
Okay, so how did you translate the word sugar?
Saccharum.
There you go.
Yeah. So
that does it.
Yep.
So Ely says she's technically not an architect yet.
No, I think she just finished a master's program at University of Michigan in architecture.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. But she's on her way.
Right.
Yeah. And she says that she learned so much about architecture in grad school and continues to learn now that I am working in the residential architecture sphere. I enjoy seeing the ways architecture can be used as a tool to shape the lives of people, and I'm grateful to contribute to that even if I am early on in my career.
Yes.
So this kid's going places.
Yes. Well, we need, I would say, here's some aesthetic bias.
Yeah.
That's what you tuned in for, right, listener? Aesthetic bias. I think architecture needs more persons who are familiar with classical forms.
Oh, without a doubt.
That's what I think.
Without a doubt, right. So I think that her classical background is only going to serve her.
It's going to help.
Very well, yeah.
And beatify the landscape, maybe.
Indeed.
Is that too much to hope for?
No, it's a lot of pressure to put on Ely, but I'm with you.
She can bear it.
Yeah. So Dave, you're going to tackle our opening quote?
I get the Ope quote.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let me set this up just a
all
little
right,
bit.
you set it up.
This is not from Vretos. This comes from an article written by the late, and in my opinion, great Christopher Hitchens. Do you have any opinion on Hitch?
Not much.
Not much.
You can turn a phrase. I don't go much beyond that.
Okay. I was a great admirer of him. I think he was a great lover of the classics.
Yes.
I know he ruffled a lot of feathers. I mean, he was a famous atheist.
Right.
And wrote a lot about that. I thought he argued in that arena a lot against a lot of straw men. But I thought he was always a fair debater, a clear thinker. And I liked his devotion to the classics.
Okay.
So in this quote from this article, he's very much on the pro repatriation.
Give them back
Side.
Okay.
Right. So take it away.
The name of this article is Acropolis Now.
Acropolis Now. I don't think Hitch himself
got to title it.
I don't think he did. That's Vanity Fair.
That's below him.
That is below him.
Okay. So what is this article from? Is this?
It's from a Vanity
5,
Fair
10
article.
years ago,
It was 2009.
2009.
It was just before the new Acropolis Museum opened.
Oh, right.
He got like a pre-tour.
Right.
Of, he was up on the scaffolding on the Acropolis.
And we're going to talk about that museum a little bit, aren't we?
Yes, that's
okay.
Crucial to the argument.
All right, so here's the Ope quote.
Yep.
Hitchens says, ever since Lord Byron wrote his excoriating attacks on Elgin's colonial looting, first in Childe Harold's Pilgrimage, 1812, and then in The Curse of Minerva, 1815, there has been a bitter argument about the legitimacy of the British Museum's deal. I've written a whole book about this controversy and won't oppress you with all the details. Thank you. But we just make this one point. If the Mona Lisa had been sawed in two during the Napoleonic Wars, and the separated halves had been acquired by different museums in, say, St. Petersburg and Lisbon, would there not be a general wish to see what they might look like if reunited? If you think my analogy is overdrawn, consider this. The body of the goddess Iris is at present in London, while her head is in Athens. The front part of the torso of Poseidon is in London, and the rear part is in Athens, and so on. This is grotesque.
Yes, right. How do you feel about that argument? I would feel bad for the museum that ended up with the bottom half of the
yes. Well, any part of the Mona Lisa, though, is going to be gorgeous. I see that it is an analogy, and I think it's apt for the most part. Here may be one difference, though. The Mona Lisa, Da Vinci's painting from, I don't know, late 15th century, early 16th. I don't have the exact date.
Yeah.
It's a Renaissance painting. It is uniquely Italian. Mm-hmm. It hasn't become a part of the Western heritage in the same way that the Parthenon and its marbles have. Now, I know the term Western heritage is to many people fraught, but you're listening to this podcast, so you were forewarned.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So my point is, I think that the citizens of London have a little bit more of a claim on the Elgin marbles than, say, folks in St. Petersburg do to half of the Mona Lisa.
I see. Okay. Yeah, fair enough.
I'm trying to be very modest because if I were a Greek, I would probably be very upset about this.
Sure, right.
So the argument of repatriation has quite a bit of pull.
Sure, exactly right. And I think Hitchens is also making the argument that all of these things that are scattered about only they need to be considered as a complete whole. Right. And so in the same way that you would want two halves of a painting together, you would want to view and experience all of these things as much as possible together as a work of art in and of itself.
You'd want two halves living in just one museum.
Yes. Exactly right.
That's Phil Collins, isn't it?
What is that, Phil Collins?
Two hearts living in just one mind.
Yeah. Oh, yes, of course. Right.
Yes.
Phil Collins fan?
No, I don't like him at all.
That's right. I'm sorry.
I don't like him at all.
I have trouble keeping track of your irritation.
It's hard. I know.
Exactly.
It's a full-time task.
Yeah.
Maybe we should hire someone else just to write those things down. So what are we going to give the listener and viewer this evening?
All right. So we are going to do a fairly brief walkthrough of Lord Elgin's life. And I think as we've kind of teased on earlier episodes that it's no secret that I'm more kind of in the repatriation camp.
Yeah, you like to take ridiculous positions generally.
And I had a strong kind of animus against Lord Elgin from what I knew. Reading this book made me much more sympathetic to him.
Oh, really?
Yes. And so I think my stance has certainly been softened.
Okay, so you were pulled toward the center a little bit.
A little bit.
Moderation. Maybe I'll be pulled there too.
Right. So the man is not without his problems and his issues, but he lived an incredible, interesting, fraught, difficult life, and I certainly walked away with a lot more sympathy for the man.
Yes.
So we're gonna kind of walk through his life, kind of what brought him to Athens, to the marbles, bringing them back, and then we're going to end kind of talking a bit about the controversy where it stands today, and what might be some answers to this problem.
Right.
Yeah.
Before we dive in, though, can I give a corrigendum?
Please.
Something that has to be corrected.
Yeah.
In a recent shout out to one of our devoted fans, Paul Jabor, we incorrectly said Paul was a resident of Australia.
He's not?
No, he lives in England.
Oh, goodness.
Yes.
Now, that's an insult.
It is. He took it with good grace, though. He was not overly, what's the word I'm looking for, melodramatic about it. But we got to correct the record.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Right. Sorry, Paul. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
There we go. All right, so let's get right into it.
All right.
We've got The Elgin Affair, Theodore Vretos.
It's Vretos, yes.
1997.
Yes,
All
right.
So what does he tell us about Lord Elgin?
First, so are you, again, just before we jump in. Elgin, I've also heard Elgin.
I
any
don't
opinion
know.
on this?
No.
Okay.
Isn't there a famous painting, Elgar?
Elgar? Mm-hmm. Sounds like a Marvel villain.
No. There is a famous painter, Elgar.
Elgar, okay.
Or Eljar, if you will.
So I don't know what to do with the G there.
Just stick it there and keep it soft.
Okay.
Elgin.
All right. So Lord Elgin, his name was Thomas Bruce, born in 1766 and lived until 1841. Mm-hmm. He was the 7th Earl of Elgin. But also the 11th Earl of Kincardine.
Yeah, weren't 6 earls enough?
You would think so.
What does this mean?
Oh, well, he's
7th in the hereditary line.
Yes.
Okay.
So he's descended from kind of two of these hoity-toity fancy pants houses, right? And
titles were hereditary. You didn't have to do a lot to get the title.
No.
But sometimes you had to do something to retain it.
Right. And so, and in reading about Elgin, in some ways it reminded me a lot of Julius Caesar in a way, that he came with these titles. Julius, he came from a noted family.
Right.
But that didn't necessarily mean that he was flush with cash, right? So the Julian clan or his family was patrician. It was had high status,
yes,
but not necessarily a lot of necessary kind of pull. Economic pull.
Just like Catiline, right?
Yes.
Famous name, but not a lot of resources behind it.
Exactly right. And so that's what struck me about Elgin as well. So he had these fancy titles, and of course that opened all kinds of doors when it came to the upper crust of Scottish and British society. But he wasn't a major power broker when it came to kind of his own personal economic means.
So Thomas Bruce.
Yep.
And he traces his lineage back
to
Robert the Bruce.
Yes. The first king of Scotland.
Correct.
All the way back, 400 years before Elgin himself.
Places, what's that? First king of Scotland, 1306 to 1329?
Yes, exactly.
I'm reading notes here, so no one thinks I have that date stored in my head, because I do not. No. But I do remember the scene in Braveheart where Robert the Bruce approaches Melva Gibson, remember?
Yes.
And, William Wallace says, you're the future, you've got to unite the warring Scottish clans. I won't give anyone the Scottish accent. And on we go from there.
Right. Yeah, I remember that the guy who played Robert the Bruce in that movie just kind of furrowed-browed and looking kind of worried all the time.
And quite passive. He has to play second fiddle to William Wallace.
Right.
But I thought he was a little underplayed.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Mm-hmm. Go back and revisit that film.
So Thomas Bruce, the Lord Elgin, 7th Earl, Thomas Bruce has all of this weight on his shoulders that he is the heir of Robert the Bruce, and he's the 11th Earl of Kincardine and so forth.
Right. So
what's he going to do?
Well, so the Elgin estate is this large manse called Broom Hall. It's still there as a.
Is it called Broom Hall?
Broom Hall.
Or is it called Broomel?
Broomel.
Do you need a tissue?
I guess in a Scottish brogue they
would say Broomel.
They wouldn't say Broom Hall.
I don't think they would say.
It looks like Broom Hall.
Broom Hall. Like a Michigander, West Michigander.
Right.
Broomel.
Where can I find the whisk? That would be in the Broomel.
Oh man.
Yeah. All right. So and apparently, as I was doing some reading, the Robert the Bruce's sword still hangs in,
Oh,
in
my.
Broome Hall, right? So, I mean, it's a fairly weighty legacy that he's got to carry and live up to. All right, so I've got in our notes and Mishka can put it up on the screen the coat of arms for the Elgin family, which just struck me probably as unintentionally funny.
Okay,
so you got a couple of these guys and they're wearing kind of ivy wreath diapers.
Yeah.
And kind of Heraclean clubs.
Boxer briefs,
Boxer briefs, exactly right.
And they had the Heraclean clubs, you're right. And they're mirror images of one another.
Yeah, they're kind of looking suspiciously at each other across the shield.
The same person, not a lot of what's the word I'm looking for? Creativity in the design of this insignia.
No.
The House of Winkle has a much better.
Oh, my gosh. Exactly right.
It's much better, isn't it?
It's much better, exactly.
Got Twizzlers growing out of the background.
Exactly right.
What else?
You got some nice slices of cheese in there. Exactly right. Yeah, some Diet Coke.
Any lineage of royalty among the Winkles?
No, you know what Winkle means in Dutch?
I don't want to know.
It just means store.
Store.
Simple, humble shopkeepers. Are the people in my family. You fly into Schiphol Airport, you can visit the Gift Winkel.
The Gift Winkel. The gift shop.
Yeah, exactly. Right.
So we've got the 7th Earl of Elgin and the 11th Earl of Kincardine.
Yes.
And this terrible insignia and the Latin inscription right at the top.
Yeah, fuimus.
Yes, fuimus. We used to be.
We were.
We were. That's not so good.
It's not so good. Now, I was going to ask you, I mean, what am I missing there? Is it like we've been and always have been here?
I think that's it.
Is that kind of the sense?
I think I would translate it as something like we've arrived.
We've arrived, okay.
Mm-hmm. Or we are established.
Right.
Or can't touch this.
I like that.
We've reached the top.
We've reached the top, right.
I guess.
So we
came over on the Mayflower, is the idea.
So don't step to us with our ivy diapers and clubs.
That's right.
Exactly.
So where did Elgin go, Lord Elgin, Thomas Bruce, with all of this great royal weight behind him?
Right. So as I understand it, and again, I'm no expert at by any means.
No one would accuse you of that.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. As I understand it, men like Bruce, like Lord Elgin, would be expected to kind of serve the crown.
Yes.
All right. And so he did this. He entered into the military as he was expected to do. He had a long military career, kind of in and out. Ultimately reaching the rank of lieutenant general.
That's pretty high.
It's pretty high. And apparently he showed fairly early on as a young man diplomatic skill. He could communicate well. He could speak well. He could solve problems. And so he's quickly shuffled off into that arena.
Okay.
And so
not going to distinguish himself on the field of battle.
No.
But maybe in the salon.
In the salon, right. So there are, I think, just a couple of paintings of him that survive. And he appears as a kind of slight man, a little bit wispy. Okay. You might say. So he's not a hulking character, imposing character.
No Herculean club.
Exactly. It doesn't look like anything like these
diaper.
Guys. Right.
But then he gets married.
He gets married to a one of the things. My favorite things about this book is the story of his wife. Is remarkable. He marries into a very wealthy family. A family that's much wealthier than he is, the Nisbet family, and marries Mary Nisbet. She's 21 years old in 1799, and she proves herself to be. She throws herself into Elgin's interests.
So he's 33 years old at the time.
Yes.
If I'm doing my arithmetic. And how old is she?
21.
21.
Yep. So she's
about 12 years apart.
A young girl, and as someone in her station. Probably hasn't spent a lot of time outside of the whatever her Brummel was, and she's thrown into this whirlwind.
Right.
And so they get married, and just a couple of months later, he was sailing off to Constantinople to take up this position as ambassador to the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
So he's going to be the liaison between the Brits and the Turks.
And does she go with him?
She does.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of stuff that we're skipping over here, but Vretos talks about this long ship journey that they take. Oh, yeah. Right. Through the Straits of Gibraltar, they stop at Malta. They're
dangerous.
And of course, they're expected to kind of call on all of these celebrities and royalties along the way. And
must have seemed very exotic to them.
Yes.
Coming from where they did in Brummel.
Exactly right. Now, Elgin had a little bit more world experience, but she had none. But he talks about how she was battling bouts of seasickness, but
no Dramamine in those days.
But she's got her Plato, and she's got her Aristotle, she's got her Cicero. She's reading it all.
I gotta read this book.
Yes, right. So she was remarkable, and then of course she's kind of expected. Once they get to Constantinople, she's the hostess, right? So she has to kind of run the household and throw all these parties, and virtually just kind of learning on the fly.
That's incredible.
So I came in with I knew nothing about her. But,
right, Mary Nisbet.
She must have been a remarkable woman.
Well, travel in those days, if I may digress for a moment, very different than now. When we go to someplace new, do you do quite a bit of research? Check out the streets, look at the pictures. Where am I going to stop? What gift winkle am I going to pop into?
I do.
You couldn't do that in times past. If there was anyone in their immediate orbit who had been to Turkey before, they had to go find that person. Yes. There were no photographs, and they had to get an eyewitness narrative account. I suppose they could read some books, but there were illustrations and drawings.
Right.
Not at all like what we have today. You can take a video tour of your final destination.
Exactly right. There's almost no reason to do it at all, to go there at all.
I feel that sometimes, which is why sometimes when I'm about to visit a new location, I deliberately maintain a certain amount of ignorance.
Just to kind of...
Because I want to be surprised.
Yeah.
I want to see it with my own eyes.
I hear that.
Mine own eyes the first time, not see it through someone else's the first time.
Yes, often like when we're on road trips with my wife,
right.
My wife is very quick. Let's just plug it into Google Maps, So, and I want to find it on my own, right?
That could be a gender difference.
It is.
She says, "What kind of a hobunk town are we in?"
Exactly.
And maybe it's not a gender difference. You tend to overdo that gender difference thing on here. I just want to say.
Really?
Yeah, on the podcast.
So you're putting that on me.
I'm trying to cast you as the chauvinist.
All right. Anyway. But, I mean, also speaking of, the book talks about, he's trying to arrange things over there, and by letters, right? And how long it must have taken a letter to go from
3 weeks
Constantinople to London.
Minimum, I would imagine.
Right? Yeah, unbelievable. And trying to keep anything, running smoothly, or trying to be a diplomat from a distance. I don't know how they did it.
And this was the age of Napoleon, right?
Right. And so he finds himself kind of walking into a bit of a hornet's nest there. And so my sense is, and I could have read this wrong from Vetos, but my sense is Elgin didn't really want to be the ambassador in Constantinople. What he wanted to be close to Athens.
Okay.
Because he gets swept up into this Greek fever, this kind of this romanticism that we were talking about a few episodes back.
Is this similar to Saturday Night Fever?
It's less disco moves.
Okay.
Right?
The bottoms are less belled.
Exactly right.
Okay.
Yeah. And so he thought this would be kind of a plumb, easy position.
Right.
Not much going on. I mean, England was not at war with the Turks, but Napoleon kind of throws himself into this. He's invading Egypt, where the Ottomans, that was part of the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
And so Napoleon takes Egypt, he loses it, he takes it again, and so Elgin finds himself in kind of this unexpected position of he's got to be the broker between these two powerhouses, right? So the Ottoman Empire is starting to kind of crumble and fall apart at this point. And France, Napoleon is on the ascendant, and he's got a very touchy position. So he goes there. My sense is that he thought, this will be easy. I got to sit in my fancy house. I can go down to Athens. And I can indulge in these interests in these antiquities.
It's Philhellenism.
Right. So one of the things I took away from Elgin is it seems that his original plan, he was not going there to plunder anything.
Of course not.
Right? What do you mean, of course not?
Do you think that any respectable English gentleman goes off and says, I'm going to plunder?
You've heard of the British Empire, have you?
Yeah, but I don't think it was based on plunder.
No, there was a lot of plundering going on.
There was a lot of taking,
yes,
and some of it illegal and immoral.
That's plundering.
Yes, but I'm saying that's not how they conceived of what they're doing. I'm trying to make an ethical point.
Okay.
That everyone always thinks they're doing something right.
Okay, I got you.
We always justify the nature of our behavior, even if others think, and rightly so, that it's really bad.
Fair enough. So
I'm picking at words,
all right,
as is my want. So
I guess all I'm doing here is I'm talking through is the way that I always heard this story is that he was going there to plunder.
Cartoonish.
Yes, cartoonish, right.
Yeah, so he may have, in fact, ended up plundering.
Yes.
I'm not disputing that.
Yep.
I just doubt it was his actual motive.
No.
I'm going to go steal from the Athenians.
It certainly was not his original plan.
Right.
So he makes he makes these kind of frenzied, hurried arrangements to hire draftsmen and painters and architects. And what he wants is he wants people there on the ground in Athens. He knows that he's going to have to be in Constantinople much of the time. So he wants this team working there in Athens, drawing and painting, making plaster casts of these things.
Right.
That's what he wants to bring back.
Right. And a draftsman, of course, just to make sure we're all on the same page, is a person who makes architectural drawings of buildings and other things,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly right. So he hires this guy, he hires an Italian guy, Lucieri, who becomes kind of his captain, his man on the ground there to kind of run this while Elgin can't be there. And this is what he really wants. And he wants to bring these kinds of things back. It's like, he's just going to take some photographs.
Right.
And that's all he's going to bring back. He's always going to leave footprints behind.
So is the story going to be, as we move along, that things began to snowball?
Yes. So once Elgin visits Athens, I mean, he goes up on the Acropolis and he's completely just, it's better than he could ever imagine.
Well, who isn't blown away by it?
Right. Yeah.
It is breathtaking.
It is breathtaking, right? And so he's blown away, and so he starts pushing these guys. I want more casts. I want more drawings. I want this.
And a cast, right, just again to make sure we're all on the same page, is when you take an object and you encase it.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes, right.
In
Plaster
of Paris, and so you get a kind of an imprint, and then you can make a replica.
Exactly right. So that's what he wants. That's what he wants for. And again, he's not bringing these things back to put in a museum. He wants this for himself. This is his own collection, right? He's going to decorate the walls of Brumil with these things, and but it quickly becomes more complicated, and so he starts. And Vretos never. I don't think Vretos knows. I don't think anybody knows really where kind of the script flips. But he's much more intensely interested in making records of and ultimately taking pieces of the Parthenon because he's so in love with this building. And
the most perfect building ever designed.
Right.
As some people say.
Exactly right. Right. And so one of the problems he runs into is that the local Turk officials start to kind of smell money. Right. And so he has to pay a fee every time he goes up on the Acropolis.
Don't we all?
Right. Yeah. Some things never change.
Right.
But one of the extreme headaches that he runs into is that it's never kind of clear who's in charge.
I see.
So you have all of these different Turkish titles. There's the Sultan at the top, then you have your Pashas. You have, I wrote this down, Dizdars and Kamakams. They're all different levels of kind of authority.
Now, a firman, right, is not a person, but a legal document.
A legal document, right.
And eventually he got a firman from somebody.
Although this firman does not exist anymore.
So there's some doubt about whether it's legitimate or...
He claims he had it. I mean, just because it can't be found in a Turkish archive doesn't mean it doesn't exist, right?
Isn't this part of the game, though? I don't mean Turks of the early 19th century in particular, but isn't this part of the game that people play when they are seeking to, take a lot of money from someone who doesn't have all the facts? They constantly change the individual who's in charge.
Yes, exactly.
Have you ever been to purchase a used item somewhere?
Oh, yeah, I know. Yes, exactly.
Who's in charge here?
Right.
Well, you're not going to get a straight answer because they don't know exactly how much you're willing to spend yet. So they pass you around from person to person.
Yes, it's a classic scam.
It is, and it's very effective.
Right. So Vretos talks about how...
Because they've got all the knowledge.
So Vretos talks about how Elgin shows up at the Acropolis, and every day there's a new guy,
right,
and charging a different amount, and he's going crazy. He's coming from England where things are run, or at least he's used to the military.
Right.
There should be
every morning you wake up, there's beans and some other terrible food waiting for you,
bangers and maybe some mash.
Correct.
Right. And so he finally he writes to the Sultan. The Sultan doesn't reply, but he finally he arranges. He gets this firman, this contract, and in this contract he claims the authority to now not just kind of to paint and to cast, but to put scaffolding up on the Acropolis and start taking a closer look, and then ultimately he starts taking things down.
Is there any possibility this was Mary's idea?
We don't really know. I mean, a number of letters of her survive. Most of they are kind of fawning support of what her husband's doing.
Yeah.
But I don't know if I don't think we can kind of point to her that she was whispering in his ear. It's pretty clear. I mean, Elgin he fell so head over heels in love with this stuff. He said, "I gotta have it."
Right.
Yep. So, and whether he did it legally, and you know, what does it even mean when you're talking about a place where nobody knows who's in charge?
Well, in the first place, right, did the Turks have a right to Athens? In one sense, no. It was a right gained by conquest, right? The fall of Constantinople in 1453.
Yeah.
And then for 400 years almost, the Turks dominate Greece.
Yes.
In a way that's really not legitimate in anybody's view that I'm aware of.
Right. So yeah, so if you're looking for a kind of a foundation of legality, you're not really going to find it on either side of
right.
this.
And what was Elgin supposed to do? Right, take a plebiscite of the existing Athenian citizens.
Right.
Are you okay with me taking your stuff? They may have said, "Well, yes, because we don't want the Turks to have it."
Right. Well, yeah, maybe.
I don't know.
I don't know. I think like a guy like Hitchens would say that what Elgin should have done was stick with his original plan: take back drawings and paintings. Leave it at that.
Even if it meant that they may have been ruined? Not the drawings and paintings, but the original artifacts.
The artifacts themselves? Yeah. I mean, I don't get this. Well, let's go on. We'll kind of see where this goes, right?
I'm trying to short circuit the argument a little bit.
No, that's fine. That's fine. That's a necessary kind of pushback against this. Ratos includes this eyewitness account from a certain Edward Daniel Clark, who was a kind of a rival of Elgin. He was over in Greece doing similar kinds of things. And
before we get that, can we talk a little bit about Elgin's health problems?
Oh yeah.
Because that's really interesting.
Right. So apparently, not long after arriving at Constantinople, there's a wave of plague, as there always seems to be back then. Right.
Just back then.
Serious, bubonic like plague sweeps through Constantinople. And apparently he catches it, survives, of course, but it completely eats away his nose.
Oof.
Right. And this is
the interior, the exterior.
Exterior, well, a little bit of both, right?
Okay.
So he's left without a nose for the rest of his life.
That's tough. Like so many of the statues he was taking.
Yes.
Poetic justice,
perhaps, right? So, and this disturbed him, as you understand, to no end.
Right.
And his wife Mary was also, she was devoted to him, but she found him very difficult to look at.
Yeah, I imagine.
And then not only that, rumors started to spread that it wasn't the plague, but it was syphilis.
Okay.
And so these rumors dogged him for the rest of his life of the various affairs that he had, and that's why his nose was eaten up. We don't really know. So there are all kinds of, and then add to that kind of the headaches of trying to negotiate peace between the Ottomans and the French. Elgin,
in the interests of Britain, though, right?
Yes,
those are the individuals he represented.
Right, exactly. He's trying to find how can I advance British interests and kind of play both sides.
Triangulate.
Yes. So Vretos includes this eyewitness account from this Edward Daniel Clark, who was a kind of another Elgin in Greece. He brought a lot of stuff back to England. A lot of his finds sit in one of the museums in Cambridge.
Well, people have been bringing coins and manuscripts forever, practically.
Right.
And that's, I guess, winked at a little more. Not anymore. Now there's very strict international laws.
Right.
But at the time, I guess it's just the size of the things he took that were so remarkable.
So. Maybe that's what it is. Yes, exactly. These tons and tons of marble objects crated up and put on ships and taken away. Right.
So read us what eyewitness Edward Daniel Clark says.
So he was watching as Elgin's men were taking things off the Parthenon. He writes, some workmen employed under Lucieri's direction were engaged in making preparation by means of ropes and pulleys for taking down the metopes. These square sculptures of kind of around the top of the.
Right. Let me describe it for just a second.
Please.
I mean,
go ahead.
Add to your description.
Yes, I was struggling for kind of exactly how to describe
I'll throw you a line here. Okay. So, a metope, like you say, is the square part between the triglyphs.
There you go.
Which are the three carved portions, and then there's a tiny little flat space in between where you can put what's called bas relief. Right?
Yes.
Sculptures. So it's not in the round. You can't look all the way around the statue, but it appears like it's emerging from the stone.
Exactly.
And they're miniatures, and they're supposed to be narrative.
Right.
You connect them all together, like flipping a book. You see a story.
Yes, exactly right. So they should all be viewed in the same place, perhaps.
Oh, I see where you're going with that.
So Elgin wants to take these down. Right? So he says, for taking down the metopes where the sculptures remain the most perfect. The Dizdar, one of these Turkish flunkies, himself came to view the work. but with evident marks of dissatisfaction, and Lucieri told us that it was with great difficulty he could accomplish this part of his undertaking from the attachment the Turks entertained towards a building which they'd been accustomed to regard with religious veneration and had converted into a mosque. We confessed that we shared the Muhammadan feeling in this instance, and we would gladly see an order enforced to preserve rather than destroy such a glorious edifice.
Right.
So a good reminder to our audience. So the Parthenon had gone through many changes.
It had been a shrine to the Virgin Mary
Yes.
for hundreds of years.
And then in the Turkish occupation, it became a mosque.
Correct.
And that's the form that Elgin finds it in.
And the word here, Mohammedan, is an old-fashioned word, of course, for just Islam.
Islam, exactly. Continuing on, after a short time spent in examining the several parts of the temple, one of the workmen came to inform Lucieri that they were going to lower one of the metopes. We saw this fine piece of sculpture raised from its station between the triglyphs, but as the workmen endeavored to give it a position adapted to the projected line of descent, a part of the adjoining masonry was loosened by the machinery, and down came the fine masses of Pentelican marble, scattering their white fragments with thunderous noise among the ruins. The Dizdar, seeing this, could no longer restrain his emotions and actually took his pipe from his mouth, and letting fall a tear, said in the most emphatic tone of voice, "Telos, enough, the end," positively declaring that nothing should induce him to consent to any further dilapidations of the building. Looking up, we saw with regret the gap that had been made, which all the ambassadors of the earth, with all the sovereigns they represent, aided by every resource that wealth and talent can now bestow, will never again repair.
It's a little melodrama there.
Well, Clark had
quite a bit.
A little bit, but I mean,
the Dizdar shed a tear. Actually, took his pipe from his mouth.
Yes,
some strong emotion.
It's strong emotions, but at the same time, it's like the Three Stooges working on this thing, and so they let this metope fall and shatters into pieces.
The projected line of descent.
Yes.
Yeah. So Pentelican marble, right? Mm-hmm. Mount Pentelos.
Yes.
Not far from Athens. Well, it's actually in Athens. You might say, but in antiquity, the town was much smaller.
Right.
So Mount Pentelos was a great source for all of the marble that went into the Parthenon and other Acropolis structures.
Right, and in the Parthenon reconstruction project, which we should talk about in another.
Definitely.
The marble that they quarry to fill in the gaps is taken from the same quarries.
Yes,
the original
it's incredible.
Yep.
And I'm no expert on marble, but I have studied a little bit for teaching the art and architecture course.
Yeah.
I could just say one thing is that the coloration in marble is caused by veins of mineral within the sandstone, right? Because marble is a kind of sandstone. It's really very soft. People think of it as hard, but it's soft, and that's why it can be carved.
Okay, yeah.
So if you've got little bits of iron and other minerals inside the sandstone, over time, oxidation, it basically rusts, and that makes the marble into all these different colors.
Right.
But the Pentelic marble, like the I think it's Carrara marble,
the Italian marble,
in Italy, doesn't really have any mineral admixture, so it stays this brilliant white over time.
Oh, very interesting. We're so accustomed to kind of think of these Greek monuments as kind of that golden yellow color.
Yes.
But when they were first quarried, it was that bright white marble.
And then often painted, as we know. Painted.
Into colors that we'd probably consider kind of garish
definitely.
Today.
You can still see flecks of it in the British Museum.
Right.
But that's a great quote here from Clark about what was happening.
Right.
And this part at the end, all the sovereigns they represent, they could never repair, but that's kind of been done, though, using more advanced technology of today.
I guess, Clark couldn't see that far ahead. Right?
No.
And because Clark, he had no love for Elgin, so he was happy to make him look
Giving him the business a little bit?
Exactly.
Okay.
Right. We get a little, maybe a sense of kind of Elgin's view on all of this, coming out of a story which involves Clark again. He goes to Eleusis, the site of the famous mysteries.
North, yep.
And there he wants to take away this large statue of a woman with a basket on her head, which was part of one of the interior gates there. And but he runs into the local superstitions that say you can't touch this lady because if she leaves, then our crops will die. And so there's still kind of this kind of adherence to she's Demeter among us, right? And so if you take away the goddess of grain, we're left without a hope. And Clark, come on. It's goofy superstition. He's going to take it anyway. He gets a Furman himself to take away the statue. And
could you just get these anywhere? Like at 7-Eleven,
vending machines.
I'll take a Slurpee and two Furmans,
right, to go get the Furman combo.
Right.
So apparently a riot breaks out. It's this whole to do.
Got this great quote from Clark here.
This quote is actually from Elgin.
Oh, from Elgin.
Yes.
Okay.
And so it's out of the situation that I think we get a bit of a sense of kind of how Elgin felt about all this.
He pushes back against Clark.
Well, he says, I mean, in some ways he's kind of supporting Clark. So Clark ultimately takes the statue, gets it on a ship, and gets out of there. And Elgin, he hears about the kind of the riot and
the brouhaha.
The brouhaha, and he too is like, what's wrong with these Greeks? And so he's in a letter he writes, the Greeks of today do not deserve such wonderful works of antiquity. Moreover, they consider them worthless. Indeed, it is my divine calling to preserve these treasures unto all ages.
Ooh, that's like a smoking gun, isn't it?
Well, in a way,
in terms of his attitude toward the whole thing.
Towards the Greeks.
Yes.
But at the same time, he's also saying, I'm going to preserve these for all time.
Well, his motive, I don't think anyone has ever doubted that his motive was preservation. He didn't.
For himself.
But he didn't profit from them. Right? He sold them to the British Museum.
And at a huge loss.
At a huge loss.
Right, but he was hoping to profit from them.
Okay. But I think it's a smoking gun in terms of his low view of contemporary Greeks.
Oh, without a doubt.
And that's what I think they're most upset about, isn't it?
Right.
They're not deserving to house their own historical treasures.
Yes, right. So he had he had all kinds of problems. Vetos talks about encountering kind of the local Greeks, and he was, I think he was expecting, unreasonably to find, little Platos and Socrates walking around. He was expecting to meet the Greeks and kind of see an echo of their greatness.
I see.
And he sees these people living in deep poverty,
right?
Uneducated. Their language is almost dead.
There has to be a name for this kind of phenomenon where you judge contemporaries by luminaries of the past.
Yeah.
But even if you were in the past, not everyone you met in the age of Pericles would be a Socrates or an Alcibiades.
No.
I think that human society would be quite variable, just as it is today.
Right. But yeah, I think Elgin kind of walked into this, kind of starry-eyed, right? And seeing it through this very romantic lens. Right?
This is why the guys at the Colosseum or the Colosseum, they dress up in plastic Roman armor, right?
Right.
This is who we really are. You can experience a little bit of what it was like.
Right. Yeah. So I think
that's what tourists want.
Yeah. So I think Elgin was just incredibly disappointed by that. And Vetos talks about how he didn't find amongst them any kind of real fervor for their own history.
No love
or even knowledge.
So in his mind, I can take this stuff. They don't even want it.
The barbarians, savages.
The Turks maybe want it a little bit, or at least they want to profit from my taking of it.
Yeah. But
that's it.
But that's it. So,
speaking of profit taking,
yeah. Oh, are we up against it?
We need to do some ads.
Let's do the break.
This episode of Ad Nauseam is brought to you by Hackett Publishing. Jeff, we have entered the new year now.
We have.
2022?
Yes, I'm excited.
Are you?
Yes, clean slate, resolutions.
A tabula rasa?
Yes.
What's one Winkellian resolution?
To read more.
To read more?
Yeah, I'm a fairly active and consistent reader.
I know you are.
But things have kind of dropped off for me lately, and so I want to get back on that pile of books on my nightstand.
Yes, and some of those are classical books, I assume?
I like about half and half.
All right.
Yeah.
And where might you purchase some of these classical books?
Some of my favorite ones have come from Hackett Publishing.
Hackett Publishing.
Yep. So they've for years now, for almost 50 years now, they've been putting out affordable, approachable, digestible translations of many different works from across classical antiquity, as many other fields. I've used a lot in my own reading and my own courses.
I think they're hitting now I'm going to take a big risk here.
Uh-oh.
I think they're hitting the sesquicentennial.
Sesquicentennial.
Is sesquicentennial 150?
It's not that old, is it?
No, they're not. No. They're hitting their 50-year mark.
So what would that be? I mean,
you
had the nice word for our 70th.
Yeah, I had
episode.
Septuagesimal
Yes.
for the quinquagesimal. There you go.
There we go.
They're going to hit They have hit the quinquagesimal mark here.
Excellent. So we can start saying
50 years. That's right. Wow. Hackett's been in the business for 50 years of bringing those kinds of books which you just adjectively described to our listeners.
I did, right.
You go to the website, you find a broad, diverse array of wonderful things to read.
Yes. And so listeners, if you want to take advantage of the opportunity that we offer here, go to hackettpublishing.com.
2 T's.
2 T's. Find the stuff you want, put it in your little satchel there. Click
your
it.
grocery satchel.
And put your title in there. And what do our listeners get?
They get 20% off any title, plus they get free shipping.
Free. That's
which is really remarkable. And, as a favor to us, We think this is what they call in negotiation business, I'm sure Elgin used this often, a win-win.
Win-win.
Maybe it's even a win-win-win.
Win-win. 3 wins?
Well, Hackett wins. They
Yes.
get more business.
Right.
The reader wins because they get a great discount on some fine reading material. And you and I win. How do we win?
We win because we're winners.
Oh, someone's got to cut this. All right. Go to hackettpublishing.com. Check it out.
Thank you. This episode also brought to you by the Moss Method. Dave, tell us a bit about the Moss Method for learning Greek.
I would love to. So the Moss Method, or Moss Method, as I call it, you know how it used to be called the Facebook?
Yeah,
Did you know about that?
I did. I never liked that.
No, then they dropped off the, and then they just called it Facebook.
The same thing happened with
I'm
Batman.
trying to do this. Really?
He was the Batman?
He was the Batman?
Yeah. So you're doing something similar here.
It's not the Moss Method. It's now just Moss Method.
I like it.
I'm thinking this is what's going to really make it take off.
Okay.
So Moss Method is a program I've designed to take you from neophyte.
To erudite.
That's correct. So if you start out with little or no knowledge of the Greek language, you can, over a fairly short period of time, amass a wealth of knowledge. I have been studying Greek for 27 years now, a very long time, teaching it for nearly as long. And everything that I've learned over the course of this time period, I'm putting it into these modules. So if you want to really gain confidence in Greek, if you already know some, but you don't have confidence, you want more depth, go to mossmethod.com, watch some of the free instruction that I've queued up. We have videos on Homer. We have videos on Herodotus, many elements of the New Testament, Plato, Xenophon's coming up, some of the church fathers like Eusebius. We run the gamut.
Fantastic.
And I will show you that you can, with confidence and joy, learn this language and use it.
Sounds great. Now tell us about the office hours.
The office hours, that's correct. So each week I convene Zoom office hours for anyone who is in the Moss program. We get together, it's usually Friday, and we talk about anything that they want to know about Greek. Lately we've been looking at the Gospel of Mark. I take them through it, read some verses, talk about the forms, the grammar. And it's not a flanky. I know you were going to ask. It's me personally.
You yourself.
Yes.
All right.
So, I don't know everything about Greek, but I'm further along than a lot of people in my experience and knowledge. So I can help take you along as a psychopampos.
Without a doubt. So if someone were interested, what should they do?
They need to go to mossmethod.com and sign up.
Fantastic.
I don't know what they'd be waiting for.
Check it out.
All right. This episode, ladies and gentlemen, is also brought to you by Ratio Coffee. Jeff.
Yes.
Tell us about Ratio.
Ratio is a company based in Portland.
Yes.
Portland, Oregon, run by the incomparable Mark Hellweek.
He is really incomparable.
He is.
I have tried to comp him, but he's not.
He's not
able to be comped.
No, he's the man. He's the man.
He invented this amazing coffee machine. Tremendous entrepreneurial acumen.
Acumen.
Synchronicity. He made this amazing machine, not one but two amazing machines that brew fantastic coffee, and they look fantastic as well.
Yes, the Ratio 6 and the Ratio 8, as our longtime listeners know very well. Now, I have the 6.
That's right.
You've got the 8.
I do.
I love my machine. It brewed a perfect cup of coffee for me this morning.
I had a pot too. If Phidias, the famous Athenian sculptor, were alive today, he would only drink from the Ratio 8.
No, exactly. He would.
He'd say, that's a beautiful machine.
He might see that machine and actually lay down his chisel.
You think so?
Right.
Parthenon would never have been built.
That's right.
Phidias would have been sitting at the base by the theater of Dionysus, just drinking Ratio coffee.
Drinking Ratio coffee, or maybe in the fetal position, knowing he could never create something that beautiful. Yes.
Yeah. So if you, dear listener, would like to score yourself one of these fantastic machines, there are two things you can do. Jeff, what's the first one?
Well, they can go to ratiocoffee.com. And they can enter the coupon code, I believe it's ANCO.
That's correct, ANCO.
And that will get them
15% off the 6 or the 8.
Or the 8.
The 6 comes in 3 different finishes. You've got stainless steel, black matte, and white.
Yep.
The 8 comes in a wide variety of beautiful finishes, different kinds of woods, different kinds of colors.
Yeah, so listener, go to the website and scroll through. Just check them out. They're
absolutely
beautiful to look at.
And it's a well put together site.
Yep.
The second way that they can score a machine is we're still running our giveaway.
Yes.
Our sweepstakes bonanza.
Yes.
Extravaganza.
Jamboree.
That's correct.
Yes.
You need to go to ratiocoffee.com/ANCO enter your information to be entered into a drawing, but you will need the special little secret prize code
Yes.
that we're going to give out later in the episode.
That's right. So keep listening, and we'll drop that in there.
That's right. Okay, Jeff, as we get back into it, where are we going next?
Well, Lord Elgin, we're going to talk about kind of the decline, kind of the end of his life, and kind of what happens to him. It's a fairly sad, depressing story. So, but with regard to the marbles themselves, from about 1803 all the way until 1812. He's boxing up and creating marbles and shipping them back to England.
So they're not all on one boat.
No, in fact,
They're just going one boat at a time.
One of them actually is going around the if you can help me out, the
Cape Sunian?
It's not Cape Sunian. It's
No.
the fingers of the Peloponnese stick down. It's kind of the first one that you go around.
It's Guthio is there, the harbor.
Yeah.
It's Githium, a Guthio.
Not far from there, one of these boats sinks, and tons of this marble goes down to the seafloor.
Was it ever recovered?
It was. They remarkably kind of engineered it back up and got it back on a boat. But in some ways, it's just kind of a harbinger for things to come. And so all along, he's depleted his personal funds in buying these things, and he's taking out loan after loan after loan. He's securing loans from banks. He's securing loans from friends, and he's just racking up all of this debt
because he wants all of this stuff so badly.
He wants all of this stuff so badly, and he thinks that I can. One of his plans was he's going to put it up in Broomhall and then charge admission, and which he actually does for some time.
So he's going to be kind of like a carnival hawker or something.
Exactly right. And so, some of these marbles sit at the Piraeus in these crates for months.
Now, the Piraeus is the harbor of Athens.
Yes.
Right down from the Acropolis. It's about, I don't know, is it 10 miles to the west?
Yeah.
Distance might be a little off. But
Yeah.
You can easily see it from the Acropolis.
Sure. And there's all these letters of Elgin that survive where he's in various places in Constantinople. And he's back in England. He's trying to write letters and trying to figure out, where are my crates? Who's got them? Where are they going? Who's paying for what?
Was it UPS that was in charge here, or
no? There was nothing like that.
Okay.
Of course, right? It was an absolute nightmare, and he's worrying himself sick about all of this stuff, and so he ultimately takes up a number of sculptures off the Parthenon, most famously stuff from the pediment,
Right.
both the east and the west.
So we should talk about a pediment just for a moment,
Sure.
because we don't want to assume too much knowledge as we're going through this.
Yes.
But the pediment is the triangular portion above the east. It's a rectangular building. The Parthenon is basically a rectangular building.
Mm-hmm.
So on the west side, there's the western pediment, which shows the scene of the contest
Yes.
between Poseidon and Athena as to who would be the tutelary deity of the city.
Right.
It wasn't named Athens at the time.
Right.
The east pediment shows the birth of Athena from the head of Zeus.
Right.
And one of the really interesting innovations architecturally was that some of the earliest pediments, when you have a rectangular building and you have two sides of a sloped roof on each side, or roof, as they say in some parts of the country. How do you say it?
Roof.
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 Roof. You're going to have a triangle formed when you slope those two roof parts over a rectangle.
Yes.
And so they began to put statuary in there. Mm-hmm. The problem, of course, is that at the center of the triangle, there's much more space than in the corners. So if the figures are the same size, you've got a wee little guy down in one corner, and in the center you've got a massive standing guy, and
Right.
the scale is all off.
It's off, right? Or you have to have them laying down or kneeling.
Well, that's
right?
what happened. That
Yeah.
was the brilliant solution to this problem. Those in the corner are reclining, like the rivers of Athens, Alphaeus and Peneus. Mm-hmm. And then those further along in the triangle are seated, typically.
Yes.
And those in the center
Standing.
are standing.
Right.
It's brilliant, really.
And on the east side, you have those wonderful horse heads of the chariots kind of
right.
going up and
Chariot
going
of
down.
Selinus, right?
Yes.
The moon god,
Right.
going up and going down.
So if you visit Athens today, when you approach the Acropolis the way they have it now, you approach it from the west side, which gives the misleading impression that that's the front door.
Right.
It's actually the back.
It's up the Propylaea.
Yes.
Yeah, I should have said Selene. I misspoke. I said Selinus. But
Selene. Yeah.
I don't know if anybody caught it, but it's going to bother me for weeks.
Right. But Greek temples are built facing east to
Yes, on an
the
east-west axis.
greet the rising sun. Right. So he takes a bunch of the stuff, boxes it up, it finds its way back home, and actually sits in a warehouse, or the 19th century equivalent of a warehouse, for months.
And one of the caryatids. We got to mention that.
Yes.
That's really important.
Very important.
So north of the Parthenon is the temple of Athenopolius.
Yes.
Also called the temple to Poseidon. Also called the Erechtheum.
Yes, it seems like it looks today like a temple that was built by a committee that couldn't agree on anything.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's built with 3 Ionic porches, and it's shoehorned into very inhospitable terrain.
Yes, exactly.
So on the south side of this building, there's the Porch of the Caryatids, and we should devote an episode to that because it's really fascinating.
Right.
But a caryatid is basically a pillar that's shaped like a woman.
Right.
And the top of the building is supported on her head.
Yes.
And there were eight of these, 6 of these originally.
6, that's right. Yeah, so kind of 4 in the front and then
Correct.
1 kind of flanking going back. Right, so and all of these, well, not all of them except 1 today, stand in the Acropolis Museum, and they have a blank, they have an empty podium where they say they're waiting. These women are waiting for their sister to return. So
From the British Museum.
From the British Museum, right? So he takes one of these, and so by some estimates, he shells out in his own personal funds and through loans £75,000, which is roughly equivalent to about $8 million.
That's a lot.
It's a lot, right? And he had
It's a lot of quid.
It's a lot of quid, and he did not. He was not good for it, as they say. So, and then add to that nightmare, he's traveling home and he makes his way through France. And while he's in France, I'm forgetting all the details, but some kind of treaty between France and England breaks down, and they start rounding up expats. They start rounding up the Brits and putting them under house arrest, and he finds himself caught in this. And so it's not like he's sent to bread and water prison. He's under house arrest in Paris, and
He's probably doing okay.
3
croissants per day.
Right, but he's going out of his mind because he can't get to his sculptures, and he doesn't know. He's trying to get letters sent and receiving letters.
And these have become an obsession for him at this point.
It does seem so. Right? And I mean, and of course, his entire net worth, such as it is wrapped up in these things. And
Right.
so, without controlling them, he's ruined. And then along the way, Mary starts having an affair with a younger man, and he finds out about it, and he takes her to court, and they get dragged through the press.
So is this where you begin to have a little more sympathy for Elgin?
I do. I mean, the guy just went through. He went through a nightmare, right? And I should say I don't think I was fair enough to him earlier on. He proved to be a very good diplomat. He actually furthered British interests. He did his job,
Right.
all while losing his nose,
Right.
trying to
Losing his wife.
and
Losing his marbles.
exactly losing his marbles, right? And then being under house arrest for almost 3 years.
That's got to be
in
terrible.
Paris, just desperate to get home.
So
He's unable to see his wife. He's unable to see his children.
So they had children as well.
They did. Yeah, they had. I think they ended up having 3 children.
Okay.
and one that didn't survive.
Now the British government comes to his rescue.
Well,
in part.
kind of. Right? So
tell us that part of the story.
He tries to display the marbles at his home, and it's a big story, and people are coming to see it. But he realizes very quickly he's not going to recoup his money. So he says, okay, I'll sell them to the British government, and he wants them. He says, I'll buy them for £90,000. He wants to make a profit.
Yeah.
At least now I just want to break even, and the British government knows that they have
all the cards.
all the cards.
In this negotiation.
Right, and so they ultimately offer him, and he very humbly takes an offer of £35,000, which is less than half of what he paid out.
You ever gotten a deal that bad?
No. I mean, I've bought some used cars that didn't end up very well. They suckered in.
Right.
But nothing like this.
No, this is pretty serious.
This it's terrible. And so he goes back to Brummel, and he kind of fades out of view. He ultimately remarries. And then dies in 1841. Mary ends up marrying the guy she had the affair with, but she kind of fades from view, and he dies mostly kind of penniless. It's really quite sad.
In his mid-70s, right?
Yes, exactly.
About 75, if I'm doing my arithmetic correctly.
And I forget exactly the date, but at some point the marbles wind up in the British Museum, where they remain to this very day.
How many times have you seen them there?
Twice.
Okay.
Yep.
I think that I have seen them about 5 times.
5 times.
Yes,
Yeah.
I love the British
I
Museum.
love the British Museum too, and the display there is it is quite extraordinary.
It's astonishing.
Right, so they're kept in this room that's built to the specifications of the Parthenon itself. Right,
Mhm. You take the tube to the Russell Square station.
Is that the one? Russell Square, yeah.
You hop out and you walk around. You pay, nothing. It's right?
free.
The donation. You can drop a few pounds into the
box,
the till there by the door, and you could spend a week in there.
Oh yeah,
Just astounding. And of course, I went directly to the marbles the first time I was there.
Yes.
Because I just had to see them. I had to feast my eyes on them.
absolutely right, and they are wonderfully displayed. I mean, and then a couple rooms over, you'll hear, hey, there's the Rosetta Stone.
Yes.
There's that sarcophagus we were talking about in the Alexander episode.
Yes.
Where perhaps held his body at one point.
That's right. There are all the Assyrian sculptures as well.
It's
Tiglath-Pileser.
yeah, as a collection altogether, it's unmatched.
It is really phenomenal.
Right. So we come down to the controversy of where should these marbles end up. So one thing that really struck me that I was not aware of is that his taking of the marbles was not celebrated for the most part back in England. It was not seen as kind of this triumph.
So it was criticized
Yes.
from the beginning.
From the beginning, and he was not a popular guy. I don't know if he had there was kind of a public, the public had kind of an axe to grind against him, but it was amplified by Lord Byron, and he wrote.
Who was a bit of a vandal himself, let's just say.
He was famously
Carved on the temple of Poseidon at Sunian.
You can still see it says Byron right
That's
there.
right.
Yeah. So maybe he shouldn't speak so much.
Carving is okay, but theft is not.
Well, Byron was a bit of a flamboyant dilettante
Yeah, he
himself,
was.
right? But he wrote these poems in which he excoriates Elgin.
Can I read some of it?
Please do.
Okay.
Yeah. So I have a small section from one of these poems.
All right.
Yeah.
But who of all the plunderers of yon fame, on high where Pallas lingered, loath to flee, the latest relic of her ancient reign, the last, the worst, dull spoiler, who was he? Blush, Caledonia, such thy son could be. England, I joy no child he was of thine. Thy freeborn men should spare what once was free, yet they could violate each saddening shrine, and bear these altars o'er the long, reluctant brine. What? Shall it e'er be said by British tongue Albion was happy in Athena's tears? Though in thy name the slaves her bosom wrung, tell not the deed to blushing Europe's ears. The ocean queen, the free Britannia, bears the last poor plunder from a bleeding land. Yes, she whose generous aid her name endears tore down those remnants with a harpy's hand, which envious eld forbore and tyrants left to stand. Should I keep going?
Please do. Finish it up. Yeah.
Cold is the heart, fair Greece, that looks on thee, nor feels as lovers o'er the dust they loved. Dull is the eye that will not weep to see thy walls defaced, thy mouldering shrines removed. By British hands which it had best behooved to guard those relics ne'er to be restored. Cursed be the hour when from their isle they roved and snatched thy shrinking gods to northern climes aboard.
Strong stuff.
Yes, he's angry.
He's very angry. I also like how he gets a little kind of a anti-Scottish element in there.
Yeah, blush Caledonia.
Such thy son could be. England, I joy no child he was of thine.
That's right.
Thank goodness he wasn't from England.
We expect that out of the Scots.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Kind of rough and rowdy, right? That one, I'm just curious if here's the line, which envious eld forbore. Do you get that?
I'm
reference?
not sure what that is. No.
Either. Yeah.
Tore down those remnants with a harpy's hand, which envious eld forbore, and tyrants left to stand. I am guessing this is a reference to the Turks in some way.
That it seems so. I just don't know what the
We should have done our
specific,
research.
Yeah, we
Ron, are you going to catch us on this?
Help us out, Ron.
Maybe next week we'll issue an additional quorregendum.
Yes.
I just like to say quorregendum.
You like to roll that
I
R,
do.
don't you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's trilling.
So so it seems there was a lot of kind of sentiment in England kind of against keeping them, send them back, and never should have been taken, which surprised me. And again, I kind of came to with kind of this cartoonish the British, the Empire, they're plunderers. They would see this as spoils of war,
right,
or something like that. But no.
So what's the case for keeping them? Let's get Hitchens here back in.
Hitchens, he summarizes this in this article. He says that basically there are 3 reasons that have been used over the last couple hundred plus years. The first reason was that the return of the marbles might set a precedent that would empty the world's museum collection. So the idea is that, well, if we send these back, isn't every museum around the world going to want their stuff back?
So you're only allowed to What, you're only allowed to possess things that originated in the geographical vicinity of the museum?
Right. And so,
How do you feel about local museums, by the way?
I've gone through very good ones and gone through very bad
I've
ones.
mostly been through bad ones.
Right.
When I go to a local museum, I'm locally bored.
Right. Well,
typically.
I think that a lot of these places don't have a lot of money to throw around.
That's a good point.
But Hitchens dismisses this by saying that the Greeks only want this stuff back. They're not asking for.
Okay.
He's
So
asking,
the counter argument is illegitimate because they're just asking for a specific thing.
right, and he actually goes on to say that the Greeks actually, in terms of other fragments and other pieces under statuary, they're actually trying to get more of their heritage into museums around the world, but they want this stuff back. Now, I don't know about that quick dismissal. This is
Well, the Siphnian treasury, some elements of that, that were at Delphi.
Yeah.
That's in Athens. I mean, that's in Britain.
That's true. Right. So I'm not so sure it's a slippery slope argument. Right?
Yes, it is.
Right. But at the same time, we live in an era where, worries about cultural appropriation and legitimate or not, I could see this kind of starting off kind of a domino effect.
Okay.
Right. So, but Hitchens says, no, they just want this stuff back and that's it. The second reason is that more people can see the marbles in London. More people
This
are going to.
seems like the weakest of the three.
Well,
There's 12 million people in London, more or less. There's 5 million in Athens, 11 million in the whole of Greece.
I guess so. I guess
I
maybe
like to throw around numbers.
you're right. I guess London more is kind of a crossroads of the world than Athens.
Fair,
right?
but maybe it's a chicken and egg kind of an argument. Bring the marbles to Athens and maybe
If you build it, they will come.
Yes, I don't really think people are going to London to see the marbles, but there is a kind of an effect of cachet that comes if you have some great objects of art.
Right. And then the third objection is that the Greeks have nowhere to put the stuff or to display them
Which was true until
this new museum opened.
2009.
Right. Did you go to the old museum that was on the Acropolis?
No.
What a dump.
I've never been to that.
Yeah, it was awful.
Yeah.
I mean, it was like you had the tube fluorescent lighting that was kind of crackling, and
The guard sitting on the folding chair.
yes, and things were behind this plexiglass, and it was not lit from the inside. It was horrible.
What do you think about the museum now as it stands?
I love it.
You like it?
I do. I think it's.
Do you remember looking at it from
fantastic.
the Acropolis?
Yes.
And they have the 3 column drums, right? You can see 3 levels. There's supposed to be 3 different column drums set akimbo.
Yes, akimbo.
Like that.
That's a good word. Yeah.
I couldn't find a better one, but set akimbo to show that just like the objects that they house. So I think this idea is clever, though it's about the only thing I like about the museum.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh my.
Well, I like the contents, but architecturally the rest I'm not
Okay.
keen on. It's too modern.
Okay. Oh, okay.
So I like modern architecture, steel and glass,
Yeah.
but not housing ancient objects.
Okay.
It just seems off.
What I love about it is that it's so open and so transparent that whenever you walk on the side facing the Acropolis, you're constantly looking back at the monuments.
That is phenomenal.
Yes.
For sure. That is phenomenal.
Right.
And the recreation at the top,
Yes.
right? It's exactly proportional to the Parthenon itself.
Yes.
And you're able to see the metopes and the frieze, not eye level, but in a way that no ancient observer could have ever seen them.
Right.
Because they were as much as 18 feet away,
Yes.
I think.
Yeah. Exactly.
Quite a distance.
Right. Right.
Have you seen the little video there about what happened to the Parthenon? It's on the 3rd floor.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And you see these little tiny Christians crawling over it, defacing it. There's a little bit of license taken, poetic license taken there.
I suppose.
And then they show the explosion, right, when the Venetians...
1687.
Right,
yeah.
was it the Venetians that were storing gunpowder?
Yeah, I think it was the Venetians were the one bombing it,
Okay.
or lobbing the cannonballs.
Right. And
And-
the Turks had stored gunpowder
Yes.
in part of the cella. And
It blew out
Right.
a good part of the southern row
Yeah.
of columns. Right. So the little Christians defacing. and
these cartoon guys crawling all over.
That's right, I
I don't
forgot
think
about
there was
that.
a whole lot of that, honestly.
No. Yeah. I think it's overstated.
Great gift shop.
Fantastic gift shop.
The last time I was there, traveling with some friends, I hope they're listening. My wife and I, we walked out on the little patio there and ordered, some delicious coffee and
Yes.
$25 salad and ate in the brilliant sunlight and looked up on the Parthenon. So
Yeah.
the setting is phenomenal.
But a little bit too modern for you.
Well, I like that, but I
yeah.
like things that are consistent. So if it's going to be modern, it should be all that.
Yeah.
It doesn't seem quite right for something so modern to be housing something so ancient.
Fair enough.
I really like consistency.
right. What I do like is I like how the whole museum is up on these pillars because as they were
Correct.
digging the foundation, they found all these
That is incredible.
remains. Right?
And as you're walking into the museum, you can see all of the excavations, some of which are ongoing.
Right below your feet.
Right. Another really nice element, I should say, is once you get inside and you begin going to the second floor, you go up an enormous glass ramp,
Yes.
which is the dromos.
Yes.
Right? The dromos, the runway that you would take up the propylaea to get onto the Acropolis.
Right.
That's a nice touch.
That is a really nice touch, right? So to bring this back to kind of the controversy, Hitchens he wrote this article kind of on the occasion of the opening of the museum. He's saying, listen, that argument absolutely holds no more water.
Right.
I mean, they have a room that's empty waiting for these marbles to be returned, and he's saying that Hitchens saying there's no more. All of these arguments fall apart, and it's time for these things to come home.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I could snap my fingers, I would probably say return the marbles.
Return the marble. Okay.
But I don't have the animus toward Elgin and toward the whole history of the event that I think a lot of people do.
Right. I think Elgin made some. I think he was a. I think he was a. Well, he was a complicated man. Like we're all complicated humans, right? And I think he was
good motives, bad motives,
right?
Good decisions, bad decisions,
right? He started with these motives of kind of a love of Greece, and he wanted to bring that back home to Britain. His personal ambition, maybe some greed, kind of took over, and he overreached. But he's no longer for me kind of this villain that was there to plunder and to take and to claim for Britain and to remove it from Greece.
So if you could snap your fingers, where would the marbles be?
They'd be in that new
all
museum.
Right. Maybe someday we will get to go to Athens and see them there.
See them all together. I would love to see that.
Yeah. Haven't been to Greece in, I guess, just about 2 years, almost 3 years.
Yeah, same for me.
And haven't been to Britain since, I guess, about 4 years now.
Yeah. Yeah. Time to go back.
Yes. All right. Well, we got to wrap this up, don't we?
Yeah, we got to get out of here. I think we're
glancing at the clock there, Winkle.
Exactly. We're out of time.
Right. So, what would we like the listener to do if they're willing?
Well, if they're willing, they would subscribe, leave a review at your favorite listening platform.
Subscribe to the podcast via Podbean or Spotify.
Yes.
Or Apple iTunes.
Yes.
Right?
Or our YouTube channel.
Yes, our YouTube channel needs some subscribers. Yep. You can watch our hijinks, such as they are, in person, so to speak.
Yep. If you've got an idea for a show, if you want a shout out, we love getting those.
We've got some great ideas recently.
Drop us a note. You can write to Dave at adnauseam.com. Don't forget the V.
Or Jeff at adnauseam.com. Get that same V in there.
That's right.
We need to thank Mishka Fernando, who does a lot of the video processing, a lot of the audio stuff, makes this all look really good. We need to thank a man who's in the studio with us this evening.
Agricola,
our videographer.
Yep.
We have to tease that code, right?
Oh, the code, yes.
Yeah, for the ratio giveaway, it's 6567.
6567. So ratiocoffee.com/ANCO
and then the 4-digit code. So you can win a free one.
All right. Shout out, thanks to our great musicians.
That's right.
Ken Tamplin, Scott Van Zen.
Yep, they give us the intro music, the outro, the bumper stuff. Very appreciative.
Great stuff. And what are we doing next week?
Next week, we're going to start a short philosophical series.
Okay.
And this is going to be on an author who is a favorite of mine, a man on whom I wrote my dissertation, a man who needs no introduction.
That would be
Marcus Tullius Cicero.
Excellent.
We're going to look at his De Natura Deorum, The Nature of the Gods. It's a 3-book dialogue. Not sure exactly how many episodes we're going to devote to it. I know other people are talking about Cicero online. We're going to give it our own unique spin.
Fantastic. Sounds great. And you have our gustatory parting shot.
I do. Yep. The gustatory parting shot comes from the famous novelist Vladimir Nabokov.
Lolita guy, right? Did he write Lolita?
I don't know.
I believe he did.
I like this quote.
Okay.
He wrote The Real Life of Sebastian Knight.
Okay.
Don't know the book, haven't read it. Have you?
I have not.
Let's hope it's not something terrible, since this is a family show. But here's the quote I like. He says, and I'm going to ask you some questions about it. The dining room was curiously impersonal, like all places where people eat. Is your dining room curiously impersonal?
No, it's very, very homey and warm. Yeah.
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 Well, we have a lot of homey elements in our dining room, but they don't get a lot of attention, right? Because you're very much focused on the food and the people. So everything is a kind of background.
So that's what makes it impersonal?
I would say so.
Okay. So
is your name scratched on the table or anything? Is personalized?
My son, when he was 4 years old, scratched his name on the table. It's still there. So it says Ian.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the dining room was curiously impersonal, like all places where people eat. Perhaps because food is our chief link with the common chaos of matter rolling about us.
That's nice.
I like that part.
I like that too.
Thank you for listening.
Thanks.
And watching.